Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. I hope you're doing all okay. We've had quite a few issues with home learning. I think I might put a transfer in to go and work at PC World. But let's try and keep things going as best we can. So here's your daily dose of story time. And I found out a new word today actually, which I didn't know. And that is, if you really love reading books and you really love listening to stories, you're known as a bibliophile, which is a lover of books. Another name for that is bookworm, but I quite like that word bibliophile. It sounds nice to say it. So yeah, maybe you're bibliophiles with all your work that you're doing with stories and listening to stories. So today we're going to continue with the Twits because it's quite a long book and there's lots to it and there's lots more craziness happening. But just before we start, can you remember the characters from this story? And if you want to pause the video for a second just to have a think, there was four main characters, well, more than four, but four sets of characters in this story that I introduced yesterday. Can you remember who they are? Okay, well, let's have a little look. So that was... the page has fallen out the book. Oh no, that's strange. Anyway, it was Mr. Twit, Mrs. Twit, the roly-poly bird, and the Mugglewump family, the Mugglewump monkeys. Okay, so that's the characters in this book. So strange, the page has completely fallen. There it is, silly me. Mr. Twit, Mrs. Twit, the roly-poly bird, and the Mugglewump monkeys. Okay, that's who's in this story. Right, let's have a look at what happens today then. So as we left off yesterday, we remember that Mrs. Twit had ugly thoughts that made her ugly. She carried a walking stick she liked to hit things with, and then she also had a glass eye, a fake eye. Let's see what happens today. You can play a lot of tricks with a glass eye because you can take it out and pop it back in anytime you like. You can bet your life Mrs. Twit knew all the tricks. One morning she took her glass eye out and dropped it into Mr. Twit's mug of beer when he wasn't looking. Mr. Twit sat there drinking his beer slowly. The froth made a white ring round the hairs around his mouth, so he wiped them off with his sleeve and wiped it on his trousers. "You're plotting something," Mrs. Twit said, keeping her back turned so that Mr. Twit wouldn't see that she'd taken out her glass eye. "Whenever you go all quiet like that, I know you're plotting something." Mrs. Twit was right. Mr. Twit was plotting like mad. He was trying to think up a really nasty trick that he could play on his wife that day. "You'd better be careful," Mrs. Twit said, "because when I see you starting to plot, I watch you like a hawk." "Oh, shut up, you old hag," Mr. Twit said. He went on drinking his beer, and his evil mind kept working away on the latest horrid trick he was going to play on the old woman. Suddenly, as Mr. Twit tipped the last drop of beer down his throat, he caught sight of Mrs. Twit's awful glass eye staring up at him from the bottom of his cup. It made him jump. "Oh! I told you I was watching you," cackled Mrs. Twit. "I've got eyes everywhere, so you better be careful." To pay her back for the glass eye in his beer, Mr. Twit decided that he would put a frog in Mrs. Twit's bed. He caught a big one down by the pond and carried it back to the house in a box. That night, when Mrs. Twit was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, Mr. Twit put the frog between her sheets. Then he got into his own bed and waited for the fun to begin. Mrs. Twit came back and climbed into her bed and turned the light off. She lay there in the dark, scratching her tummy. Her tummy was itchy. Dirty old ladies like her always have itchy tummies. Then all at once she felt something cold and slimy crawling over her feet. She screamed, "What's the matter with you?" Mr. Twit said. "Ow!" screamed Mrs. Twit, bouncing around. "There's something in my bed." "I'll bet it's a giant skilly diggler. I saw one on the floor just now," Mr. Twit said. "It's a what?" screamed Mrs. Twit. "I tried to stamp on it," Mr. Twit said. "It's got teeth like screwdrivers, though." "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "Save me! It's all over my feet!" "It's going to bite your toes off," said Mr. Twit. Mrs. Twit fainted. Mr. Twit got out of bed and fetched a jug of cold water. He poured the water over Mrs. Twit's head to wake her up. The frog crawled up from under the sheets to go near the water. It started jumping around on her pillow. Frogs love water, of course. This one was having a brilliant time. When Mrs. Twit came to, the frog had just jumped onto her face. This is not a nice thing to happen to anyone in bed at night, and she screamed again. "Ah!" "By golly, it is a giant skilly wiggler," Mr. Twit said. "It's going to bite your nose off." Mrs. Twit leapt out of her bed and ran down the stairs, and she spent the night sleeping on the sofa. The frog, however, went to sleep on her pillow. What a horrible couple of people. Awful people, aren't they? Playing tricks on each other like that, playing pranks. They're not nice, funny pranks, though. They're really mean. So, have a little think. What about what I've just read? And can you think about some of the tricks that they played on each other? Yeah? And can you have a think about what tricks might they play on each other going forwards in the story? Can you make a prediction about what Mr. Twit will do next to Mrs. Twit and what Mrs. Twit will do next to Mr. Twit? Can you make some predictions today? Okay? Great work, everyone, this week. We're loving seeing what you've been up to. Keep plugging away, and hopefully we'll be able to smooth out all the problems we're having by the end of the week. All right. See you tomorrow. Bye.